o'clock, and it's April 24th, 2018, and it is my privilege to open this City Council meeting. Well, everyone's having such a good time, which I'm glad. Delighted you're all here in the audience, and those of you at home, thanks for joining us tonight. So my pleasure to invite you to rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Always a good way to start the evening. May we have the roll call, please, Regina?
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Here.
Councilmember Borelli?
Here.
Councilmember Clarici?
Here.
Mayor Thomas?
Here.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Here. All right. With that, we're on item 3.1, brief comments by the City Council. I'm going to start us off tonight, and it is my pleasure to announce that that Placerville is rising and shining this Saturday. So for those of you who have not signed up for our Community Service Day, it's this Saturday from 8 to 1. And it is a good time in Placerville. There's usually about 400 people. I have not heard 300 to 400 how many people have signed up. But we will descend on the city, and I know our Public Works Department does a Herculean job in coordinating with the teams of volunteers to do projects throughout our city, whether it's improving the bike trail or repurposing our parks with bark and fresh plants, and even re-roofing side buildings, painting the parking garage. I know I'm going to be on that.
We're gonna paint that again?
If there's something you like to do, we got a project for you. And I'm going to tell them how to do it as I'm getting to that. Awesome.
Okay.
Good idea.
I didn't know, and I.
Oh, yeah. So register at Rise and Shine Placerville 2018.eventbrite.com. That's Rise and Shine Placerville 2018.eventbrite.com. And Steve, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think we're all ready to go.
All
Just
right.
sign up, and we'll have all the materials there and everything. We do ask that people bring their sunscreen, eye protection, and gloves with them.
Oh, great idea.
We're
Okay.
ready. We'll provide water for everybody. So.
And then lunch is provided at Lions Park at noon, so we can all celebrate the beautification of our city, it's a really, really fabulous day.
And you get a T-shirt.
And you get a T-shirt. What's not to like? I also want to thank all the crew at the Downtown Placerville Downtown Association for putting on an awesome girls' night out. I think this was the best ever. I mean, the ladies descended on town, and they had a good time. And it was just really fun. I was at Robinson's all night working it was huge crowds, and really fun to see people enjoying our city. And so, thank the Downtown Association for putting on such a nice event. So, any other comments? I will start to my left. Councilmember Wilkins? No, Councilmember Clarici? No?
Well,
Councilmember Borelli.
I'm still on volunteers. Volunteer week. I know was it last week, or are we continuing? Anyway, I attended the El Dorado Community Foundation Awards dinner, and all the awards that they give are pretty much consist of all the people and the organizations that are volunteers. And usually what happens, and as it did this time, they have a demonstration, if they can, from one of the people that they awarded to, and this was to the El Dorado Union High School District Robotics Lab. And I knew about the robotics program, but I did not realize that it's made up of the 5 high schools, and it's also run by volunteers, all volunteers. And they had a lot of the kids speak about it. This particular one, they designed a robot that went over and took blocks and put them in different barrels and stuff. Anyway, these kids are so enthused and just delightful, and they told about their futures, and some were going to go into engineering. One young man, it was really surprising, he's going to be a male nurse, but he's taken and loving this program with the robots, and as we all know, robots are probably our future.
Big part of
Anyway,
healthcare nowadays.
I just wanted to commend them. Another great bunch of volunteers.
Thank you so much. Vice Mayor Cunha.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have several announcements. Continuing in the theme of volunteerism, I would like to thank Community Pride specifically Kathy Lishman, who with her small crew of Community Pride gardeners, along with Charlie Basham, who is part of the Goldbug group, they almost single-handedly cleaned up the Orchard Garden, which is on the corner of Bedford and Highway 50.
I saw them doing that.
And Kathy and that group actually are the folks that do hold the Caltrans authority to get out there and do that work. So thank you very much to her and Charlie for getting out there this past weekend and getting that cleaned up for us. Big step towards, maybe I understand there might be a new plan coming forward on that. Secondly, I would like to commend the Placerville group of Seroptimist International. I recently attended their scholarship event, and I'm happy to report that they are still giving out scholarships to all of our local high school seniors, helping to promote women throughout the world. And also they have a outreach program that they are working on to help women in the community in need. And they gave a couple of really heartbreaking examples of single women in their 70s that they've recently been able to help here in our community, including some folks that were living in their car. So the need is very much there. And they are also continuing their efforts with the human trafficking, sex trafficking issue, and I believe they're working with the chief for his presentation. They're going to be doing it in our local elementary school here very soon. So they are a small but very mighty group that remains active throughout the community. I also like to point out everybody that this is an exciting day, April 24th, because construction update number 5 was issued today on the Western Placerville Interchange Project. And I want to compliment staff on the very detailed information that they're putting up, that it's available in a number of places for the public that are interested to get accurate, up-to-date information. Due to our very strange weather, there of course have been some changes in the dates. It looks like they now plan to start the full grading activity on or about April 30th. The trail is currently open. Its new closure date, and I might add that it's a temporary closure date, is currently May 8th or 9th, and it will be closed during the majority of the grading work. City engineer says it may be quite different. What I like to point out, though, is there was some false information floating around that the trail was going to be permanently severed and never put together. And that was just totally false. So this is just a construction closure, and it's for everybody's safety. And once the work's completed, the trail will be properly reconnected, and all of the community that enjoys that can go right back to doing that. And lastly, I would like to ask a favor of our city manager, if before we proceed too much further, if he could give us a brief update on the Clay Street Bridge project, because I know the review period has ended, and if the council so desires, I think it'd be appropriate to see where we are with that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and Pierre, you can jump in if you have any information additional. We don't have a lot right now, other than Pierre's informed me we have 68, I believe, is the number of comments that we received. Those will be reviewed by staff and our consultants and brought back in the final EIR for certification to the City Council. I'm guessing we're at least a month out, maybe a little more, to get all of that done and get the responses for those. However, in the meantime, we are working right now on scheduling some design workshops. We are not waiting till we do that, so we will have those scheduled. I wish I could give you a date right now, but we're still working on some things on those that we need to put together, and then we will have some design workshops, and we will make sure that we broadcast that information to everyone as broadly as we can so that you get it. So, thank you.
Really looking forward to that creative process moving forward. And thank you all for your diligent work on this. And thank you, Vice Mayor Acuna.
Thank you.
All right. It is my pleasure now to introduce Captain McKay and Chief Hardy from the El Dorado County Fire District, who's going to be giving us a presentation on defensible space, which is certainly a hot topic as we move into summer. See how I did that? Yeah.
Right, segue.
So welcome. We are delighted you gentlemen are here tonight. I know my husband has been clearing our property like crazy in preparation for the summer. So.
You're just a hazard.
Good evening, Captain McKay.
Good evening. Can you guys read it? Because because I can't from back here.
Yeah.
Do you guys need me at the microphone, or can I walk around? All right.
And I apologize. I should have introduced you as the fire marshal. I apologize.
You know, if we let people know they can move that thing, we're in trouble. They're just like, they'll just keep coming closer and closer. Pretty soon it'll be right up here with us.
All right, good evening. My name is Brandon McKay. I serve as the fire marshal for the El Dorado County Fire District. It's my honor to be here tonight to kind of give you an overview of some defensible space. We're going to go through some guidelines on how to make your property safer, safer for not only your property but the community. I also added some slides in there that kind of goes over some operational issues. So I'll kind of touch on that of why we want defensible space. Not only does it help protect the property, but it also aids in us in the event of an incident. So if you guys have any questions, feel free and stop me and ask me questions, and we can discuss it as we go. So going through this, you may see some key terms. Defensible space. It's basically the natural landscape area around a structure. It's usually been maintained or designed to reduce the fire danger. You also may be hearing it called fire escape. It's the same as defensible space. WUI is the wildlife urban interface, and that's the zone. It's basically the transition zone between unoccupied land and human development. Can you have a WUI area in the city? Sure. Fair Oaks is probably a very good example next to the river. Right behind the Cal Expo is probably another very good example of a WUI area in the city. But more commonly, it's the areas that we reside in. It's kind of the foothill communities where single homes or little subdivisions are mixed in amidst the natural vegetation and terrain. SRA is the state responsibility area, commonly the county unincorporated areas. LRA, local responsibility area, incorporated areas within a city, and also the MTZ, which is known as the mutual threat zone. That's kind of the area that kind of meets between the SRA and the LRA that CAL FIRE really wants to help us protect so it doesn't get in their area. So the amendments to PRC 4291 and Government Code 51182. I think everybody's probably more familiar with 4291 because that's the big push through CAL FIRE on defensible space. Government Code 51182, same thing. The Public Resource Code deals with the unincorporated areas. Government Code deals with the incorporated areas, or the LRA. So in 2004, Governor Schwarzenegger signed Senate Bill 1369, which amended both those codes. It used to just be a 30-foot clearance around a structure, and now it increased it to a 100-foot clearance. I kind of hit already on the Public Resource Code and the Government Code on what they involve. It kind of gets mixed up through property owners that they think both the Public Resource Code and the Government Code applies to vacant land. It doesn't. It's improved property only. That's where our weed abatement ordinance through the city comes in to help out with vacant land. So what are we trying to accomplish with the defensible space? A good defensible space is your property's first line of defense. It increases the chance of your home surviving a wildfire. It also helps prevent a structure fire from getting into a wildfire as well. Like I said before, we live in that transitional zone where human development resides in the natural vegetation, especially on warmer days, summer seasons. If we get a structure fire, you're getting ember casts, you're getting that radiant heat off that can be detrimental and light off surrounding brush. That could start a wildland fire, and now we have basically 2 incidents that we're working with. It also provides increased safety to firefighters defending your home. It gives us a little space between that brush to get in there, to lay a line or hose, to kind of do some structural protection if we need that. Gives us a little bit of safety area to work and mitigate helping defend your home and prep it too as fires approach. And this is where it kind of comes in. We're like, hey, this doesn't really have to deal with defensible space, but it does. So I apologize if this is anybody's properties in the photo. I didn't go around taking photos. These were all taken from the internet, so hopefully none reside in the city or the county. But if you see on that structure, it's not prepared very well for us to engage to protect that property. It shows that it's more of a detriment. We have a lot of wood. We have a lot of junk piles out and around it, and that's a big safety issue. One, it's hard for us to get hoses around there. Two, when fire comes up, it's hard for us to retreat and escape if we need to. And three, those rubbish piles actually will hold embers and create another fire, basically kindling for your fireplace. On the right, that's a structural triage tag. When we go around doing triage for structures, this is what we put out on front. Lets us know, is this house defendable or is it not defendable? Unfortunately, houses like the one on the left, we would not, I wouldn't say waste our time, but we wouldn't jeopardize our safety to try to defend something that's probably going to catch on fire. Kind of going through it, basically the top of the A, is it accessible through a Type 1 engine? The Type 1 engines are probably your most common fire engines that you see. It's the municipality fire engines with the front. The Type 3s are the big four-wheel drive Tonka truck looking fire engines. We write the address down in the event that in a wildland fire that does burn up or you can't see it. We do have some sort of direction of where we are and what structure we're protecting. The W is there water available for us? A circle with a line through it means that's not available. The key one, as we're speaking tonight, is that defensible space. Do they have that 100-foot clearance? That's a key element for us. Also on the right is the human sign. Do we have human life still residing in that structure? And below we can write notes, kind of give us some little key notes to what's going on with that structure. This one, you can see they have 3 residences. Obviously, they made notes of overhead power lines and propane tanks as well. So how do we accomplish defensible space? In fire prevention, we base our fire prevention off of the 3 E's. It's engineering, education, and enforcement. Engineering, not so much on defensible space. It comes into play through any kind of home additions, remodels, new homes. Now we have the building codes that require fire-resistant construction. So that's where we kind of capture the engineering. The education, I think the education is probably the most important out of these 3. That's going out and that's educating our homeowners and landowners how to be better at clearing their properties, how to make their properties more defendable. If we give them the tools, then they obviously have the manpower, the tools to help us protect their property. Finally, enforcement. After the first 2, if they don't really work out too much, then we have to go through the enforcement stage. Usually, you start enforcing a few properties, the word gets out, and people start really kind of complying and, knowing that you mean business. So the process of compliance, kind of like what I've just explained, we go around educating the residents through defensible space inspections. These are non-punitive inspections that we offer. Currently, we assign Engine 25 to the station right there on Sacramento Street. Each 3 battalions have designated areas within their city that we designate earlier in the year as high hazard fire areas. And then we also bring Squad 21 from Camino down to assist in those areas as well to kind of double the efforts. So they go around, they knock on doors, they ask residents if they would be willing to do a defensible space inspection. The feedback that I get from the engine companies, it seems like it's a very warm response that we get from citizens, that they actually want us to come in and talk to them and explain the process. Sometimes we get, I'm too busy right now. And in that case, we just say, hey, if you want it, contact us, we'll come back. If not, we can live the literature, and it's kind of a self-paced checklist that you can walk through. So through that, we have the codes that I told you. Also, this last code cycle, the 2016 California Fire Code, the Office of State Fire Marshal adopted both the government code and the public resource code. So that kind of gives us a little extra teeth to bite on the enforcement aspect of that. And then we have Title 8, Chapter 4 of the Placerville City Code, which is the weed abatement. In the event that the defensible space inspections don't work out into our favor and people don't like to comply, we kind of step it up and we give a certified letter giving them a hazard violation notice that we send to the property. It is a certified letter. It gives them 14 days to comply. Without the 14 days, then we further into enforcement issues. The next would be a citation, and we would do that through our administrative citation. Finally, the weed abatement ordinance does give the city the ability to hire a private contractor to abate that hazard, and then lien the property on the tax roll. That is kind of a, touchy subject. Just with knowledge, Eldorado Hills has a pretty advanced weed abatement program that they have a inspector that kind of goes around assigned to that. Talking to them, they write off about $15,000 roughly. These are just rough numbers a year that they pay contractors to come and weed abate properties that they can't get on the tax roll to get that back. If we were to do that, I would say that number would be higher. The reason because Eldorado Hills has a lot of light, flashy grass fuels, so they can hire people with weed eaters, and it makes quick work. We have a lot thicker brush. We have some manzanita. We have pine, so that's going to cost a lot more money. So the main points on defensible space, really we have two zones. We have Zone 1, which is the lean, clean, and green zone. We have Zone 2, which is the reduced fuel zone. And in both those, we kind of look for horizontal clearance and vertical clearance. Zone 1 is known as the your first 30 feet, and that's where you people think it needs to be moonscaped. It doesn't. That's where it's ornamental plants, grasses, decorative plant material, removing all the dead brush within that, keeping it nice and green. Zone 2, the reduced fuel zone, that's the additional 70 feet to make the 100 feet. And how I describe that in the best way is a park-like setting. So that's limiting up your trees, getting your space in between your brush and your trees, decreasing that lateral fuel, and we can kind of go into that in the next few slides. So like I just explained, Zone 1, the lean, clean, and green zone, that's that 30 feet immediately around your house. You're removing all flammable vegetation, any dead, dying plants 30 feet from your house or structures. You can keep green trees, foliage, so forth. A good one is the 10-foot clearance around your propane tanks. I know the propane tanks are ugly. Nobody wants them in their front yard. You try to decorate them. But that is fuel around a pretty flammable fuel source. I'm sure Chief Hardy can explain. I think we've probably all been on wildland fires that have impinged on those propane tanks, and the blow-off valve has released. That is one sound you probably don't ever want to be next to. So it's definitely an attention getter. Zone 2 is that reduced fuel zone. That's a park-like setting. That's basically the best way to describe it. Providing your fuel separations both vertically and horizontally, cleaning up all the fallen leaves, needles, twigs, barks. It's also referred to as duff, and that's that ground litter, it's that thick stuff you see in the forest. So we want to remove that. to provide a clean and a non-fuel zone on the ground. Vertical clearance, if you see to the picture on your far left with the house and the trees with the fire going up, that's what we call lateral fuels. And it's basically smaller fuels that kind of step up like a ladder into taller fuels. And that's why we're trying to get that vertical clearance to decrease that. If a smaller brush catches on fire, it doesn't have the ability to get up into the tree canopy of the taller trees and then progress that way. So we try to have people prune lower branches 6 to 15 feet off the ground. Usually I say head high, 10 to 15 feet. That gives us stability. If there is a fire down there, we have full access to your property where we can get under trees and work. Another good point on the vertical clearance is the trees along roadways and driveways should be trimmed 15 feet. Our engines are pretty tall, especially like I discussed earlier with the Type 3 engines. They're the four-wheel drives. They sit very tall. We have a lot of low-lying trees. Sometimes we have to power through them. Other times we have to get out and cut them. That just delays our ability to get to the incident in a timely manner. So here's some good examples of defensible space clearance. You got the one on the far left. It's kind of a park-like setting, good green grass, good clearance around it. The one on the right, you see how the fire kind of came up the hillside and stopped. It looks like they have, obviously they have good landscaping, ornamental plants around that. It looks like they have a what we call a scratch line or a good clearance in that brush and that dirt area. I don't know if this has a pointer. Oops. Okay, so this little area right here, good clearance on that, kind of provides some extra spacing. Some bad examples. Kind of self-explanatory. You have wood homes with heavy fuels, heavy brush surrounding them, not very good clearance. Detrimental in both ways. One, fire coming into it, probably going to catch that structure on fire. Also, if there happened to be a fire inside that went outside, it's probably going to catch the vegetation on fire. I personally go through this every year with my in-laws. Hopefully they're not watching this right now. They have a cabin up in the Truckee area, and they always say, how do I defend against a Santa Rosa fire on this? And unfortunately, when you get fire that big, it's aircraft and dozers. I'm sure Chief Hardy can attest to that. That's the only thing that's going to put those fire out. I also tell them, and I don't want anybody to get, take this the wrong way, but you build a wood house in the middle of the wood forest, there's not much defense you can do. I mean, you can have good clearance, but you have fuel and fuel. So driveways, good and bad. The driveway on the left, good clearance, good overhead clearance. We like driveways 12 feet. Our new engines are about 10 feet mirror to mirror. So they are wider. And the reason for that is the new emission standards. They have to go wider on the cab. The driveway on the right is kind of what I was telling you about with the low-hanging branches. Obviously, it's definitely not 10 feet wide. It's probably 8 feet wide. Yeah, it's going to make difficult situations both getting in and out. This is just kind of enforced still that fires can still occur even with proper defensible space. The picture on the left, that's Scripps Ranch, a community in San Diego. As you can see, it's probably all stucco homes, stucco eaves, Class A roofs. But what's pretty interesting is, it just decimated this neighborhood, but the grass is still clean, the trees are still clean, and it happens. The other one is another good example of fire can still happen even with defensible space. So there's human involvement and stuff like that sometimes kind of contributes to it. But this one is, I mean, I would say it's textbook, just with the limbing up the trees, good park-like setting. You see the ground down here is pretty clear of any kind of ground litter. The house, good fire-resistant construction with stone and brick. You got, it looks like eaves are stuccoed underneath and a Class A roof as well. The only thing that looks kind of detrimental is that flammable deck with the wood. And this is just to kind of drive the point home, and probably the police chief can kind of contribute to this or contest to this. We can never rule out the human factor. No matter how many laws or codes we have, we just can't control what people do. So if you can police yourself and understand what are some hazards, I think that's the best. I mean, on this, you can just kind of pick out how many things that's going wrong. So you have an open fireplace here. You got wood backing without separation. You got a propane tank, a gas can, flammable rags. You got propane tanks, aerosol. You got wood pile here. So so we kind of use this presentation for both county areas too. I think the city is pretty well off on fire hydrants and water access. There may be some remote areas. In the county, especially on new construction, anything not in a EID area and further than 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant, or I should say 600 feet from a fire hydrant, we require them to put water storage tanks on. In wildland fire, do we like to connect to hydrants and water sources? No, we like to be mobile. We like to be able to get out and cut feet and run. Bad things happen. But they are good resources in the event that we do have some time that we can refill our engines to kind of stock back up. We do have a tank standard. If people are interested in putting a water storage tank up, we can surely give them those standards and help them out. The last is just safety information for the home. And like I said, that kind of prevents any kind of fire from escaping from the house out into the defensible space area. Good things, make sure you have working smoke detectors in the hall bedrooms and main hallways. Make sure you have a good working carbon monoxide detector. I can't tell you how many fire investigations we usually go on, and we ask one of the first questions, did you have a smoke detector? Was it going off? And people, I don't know if it's the adrenaline and they don't know, but a lot of times they say, I don't remember that beep, I don't remember the chirp or the alarm sounding. So fire extinguishers, very good thing. At least one on downstairs, one in the garage. If you have a two-story, always good to have one upstairs. That way you can kind of control the fire if it's small. Visible address numbers, this is a key. Not for fire, but for medical aids as well. Code requires 4 inches. Ideally, 6 inches is better. We're not subdivisions. We don't have Serrano subdivisions with lights. A lot of our roads are dark. If you ever wonder what it's like to be a firefighter at night responding to a medical aid, fall asleep tonight and have your spouse wake you up at about 3 o'clock in the morning, run outside, get in your car, try to read a Thomas Guide while they're driving up and down the road looking for numbers. So every little bit helps us. It really does. A big issue we have too is this during winter months, people improperly disposing their ashes from their fireplace or wood stoves. Please get a metal trash can, an ash can that's UL listed with a good lid on it. Have your chimneys cleaned and inspected. And don't use extension cords for permanent power. Only use UL listed power strips. So that's kind of your defensive space and a little something extra, just in a nutshell. Do you guys have any questions?
That was a very thorough presentation and really important for us all to keep in mind as we move into summer. Any questions or comments by my fellow council members?
The only thing, and you did point out on that one house about stuccoing under the eaves or the...
Correct.
I think that's something that a lot of people do not realize. Would you explain that?
Well, that's actually a new building code that requires your eaves to be stuccoed.
But like for us that don't have the newer, we're,
Yeah. Can you do it? Yeah, you can. There's no
so
code
tell them what
requirements.
I'm talking about, is that we mentioned.
So the eaves, the boxed eaves that we talk about.
Yeah, and the fire whips up underneath them, is that? what-
Exactly. So a lot of the older homes, it's basically your exposed rafter ends, or call them dovetails, and they have your roof decking on top of that. So you can get fire whirls up and under there with fire brands. They can light off and basically start your house, gets into your attic. Once it's in your attic, it's kind of off to the races.
And I understand that that's pretty prevalent. People just had no idea,
Correct.
So,
Correct.
thank you.
Actually, I do have a couple questions before we
Sure.
let you go. Does the city or the fire department initiate code enforcement on vacant properties generally, or is it a combination of such?
I think the last few years has kind of been a combination. It seems like the code enforcement has been very helpful, going out and kind of being our eyes,
Okay.
and sending complaints forward to the fire department.
Okay, wonderful, because I know there are some properties around town that folks are concerned about from time to time.
Correct.
And also, so many of our streets are, our residential neighborhoods are very narrow with cars parked on either sides, and as you were saying that your engines are 10 feet wide. Have you had challenges getting around some of our neighborhoods in town?
I think we probably would have. Yeah.
Because that is a concern, what can be done about that? I mean,
So is that an
do we need to look at,
Is that an
Well,
no parking on some of our
yeah, so we have
streets,
ordinances
or-
on newer streets, newer subdivision that require X amount of feet. So anything under 24 feet, you can't have parking on either side. You start getting further and further out, you can start having parking on one side. Out to 36 feet, you can have parking on either side.
More of our older neighborhoods, though, that are.
Yeah, I don't know if that's enforceable unless they're deemed fire roads or fire lanes. I don't think you can kind of enforce that unless there's.
They have no other place to park, most of them.
Yeah, and
tricky.
unfortunately, if there's, I don't know if there's anything in writing that the city has that has that deemed as fire lanes or emergency access routes. That would probably be something we would have to dig through in records. I know the fire department doesn't have that kind of information.
Okay.
And a lot of our homes were built
Yeah.
way before fire codes. So
Right. Interesting. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things. First of all, Brandon, thank you very much for coming this evening. Chief Hardy, good to see you in the audience. Brandon and I have worked in the several fire seasons. As I told him before the meeting, I got my first weed complaint call yesterday.
Oh, did you?
And so, Mark, those weeds. So we will work through it. And it wasn't your house, John. So it's okay. And it does take time, and it takes some help from our planning director, Mr. Rivas, to get some information, sometimes to contact these owners. We've had some really good success, I would say. It's frustrating. Sometimes it's repeat folks that don't seem to get the message.
Right.
And as I've gotten to know a little bit more about it, one of the concerns I have, and with the changes that occurred a few years ago in the law, it allows your organization and our planning department a little more authority, and that's the 100 feet and on a city lot with a structure on it. And one of the huge hazards that my neighborhood faces is wooden fences. While they give nice privacy and they go up fairly quickly, they're a tremendous fire spreader. And I'm trying to take out sections of my wooden fence as it needs replacement and it not going back with wood. But what do you do if you've got a resident that's got 3 foot of dry grass up against the other side of your common wooden fence and doesn't have any regard to deal with that? Do we call? Doesn't see that as a problem, but
yeah,
you've got fences connected to house to house to house, typical 100-foot wide city lot.
yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, you can call. We can go out there. We'll assess it.
Okay. Great.
We'll determine if it's definitely a fire hazard or not. I would ask the public to give us a chance to actually get out there.
Absolutely.
It does take some time. Unfortunately, in our prevention office, we're pretty busy. We're with limited staff. I'm pretty much one of the only people up there at the time, full time. So, and we do process permits and planning and everything else that goes along with it. So we try to plan accordingly to get out there and inspect things.
As I said, you've done a great job the fire seasons that I've worked with you, and we've gotten every one of them addressed and I believe the people that live next to them are always very appreciative of the effort.
Right.
The frustrating thing is years like this where we get sun and rain, it's a perfect grass maker,
Yeah.
which is great if you're in the cattle industry, but it's ruinous if you're trying to protect neighborhoods. And the people that cleared last week, I guarantee they'll be out with the weed eater again in a couple more weeks because it's still growing.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a huge timing issue.
Yeah.
You can't go too soon. You can't go too late.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I've faced the same problem too on my property where you mow it and then
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know, the rain comes and the heat comes and then now you got waist high weeds and then it cools off back to 50 and then kind of wait and then try to mow it, and it's a never ending battle. I just try to urge people, be mindful of the environment, the season that you're in. Hot summer days or even hot days like this, you know, your grasses, your light flashy fuels are starting to really dry out. Weed eating, mowing later on in the afternoon is definitely a fire hazard and a detriment. One spark, one fire. Anything from a weed eater to a lawnmower blade, hitting rocks. We've had several fires start like that throughout the county.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Fire Marshal McKay. Really appreciate this very informative presentation. And Chief Hardy, thank you so much for being with us as well.
Thank you for letting them work
Appreciate
with
it.
us, Chief. Appreciate this hard work.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Great.
Mayor?
Yes.
Could I just mention, we have some flyers on the back table that talk about defensible space, and it's also in our newsletter that we sent out, which is online, our e-newsletter. So
Oh,
people want to
wonderful.
look at that and what they should be doing. They're
Great.
available.
That's a help to our residents. Thank you so much. All right. We had no closed session this evening. Adoption of the agenda. Any changes?
Move for adoption.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Item 6, ceremonial manners and proclamations. All proclamations are not equal, and this one is particularly, I think, poignant and important. And it's my pleasure to read this before I turn it over to Chief Ortega. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville proclaiming May 13th through 19th, 2018, National Police Week in the City of Placerville. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have adopted Public Law 8754, designating May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day in recognition of law enforcement officers nationwide who have sacrificed their lives or been disabled in the performance of their duties. And whereas Public Law 8754 also designates the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week, in recognition of the service provided by the thousands of federal, state, and local law enforcement officers. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of those who dedicate their lives to the law enforcement profession and to keeping our communities safe. And whereas Placerville police officers and officers throughout the state and nation risk their lives on a daily basis to maintain peace within the community and protect the lives and property of our citizens. And whereas the members of the Placerville Police Department provide a vital public service safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of this city. Now, therefore, I, Wendy Thomas, Mayor of the City of Placerville, do hereby proclaim the week of May 13th through 19th, 2018, as National Police Week in the City of Placerville, and be it further proclaimed that May 15th shall be Peace Officers Memorial Day in the City of Placerville, and the United States flag shall be flown at half-staff at all city offices on this date. And we are just beyond grateful to the men and women of our law enforcement who give of their lives daily to protecting and serving our community. And that is, I think, one of the most difficult tasks in today's political climates. The pressures that you face are extraordinary. You're called to be superheroes, where everything you do has to be extraordinary. And if not, you're rung over the ringers, and you're not allowed to be any manner of human, where the slightest mistake or human misstep is just, your demise on social media and throughout the community. And I can't imagine what it means to continue to get up every morning and go to work under that extraordinary pressure. And the citizens of Placerville are just extraordinarily grateful for our police department, who serves us with grace and strength and courtesy and the top level professionalism. So with that, I turn that over to you, Chief Ortega.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll just say, I'll speak for everybody in the police department, that it's an honor to get up every day and serve our city. It is an honor to get up and do the job that we're called to do, because this job is not just a job. It's not a job you just go fill out an application, with all due respect to everybody else that has other jobs. It's a calling that most of us have agreed to do willingly. So Commander Wren is going to be my assistant tonight as I read some notes I made. Oh, look at that. You get applause. This year, National Police Memorial Week will take place, as the mayor said, May 13th through Saturday, May 19th. This law was first designed and proclaimed in 1962 by President John F. Kennedy, which designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which the date falls as Police Week. This is an annual tribute to the officers who were killed in the line of duty in the United States. And in the United States, more than 21,000 officers have been lost in the line of duty since 1791. There have been more than 1,500 officers lost in the line of duty in California since 1850. Along with this city proclamation, members of the City Council and City Department directors are being presented, that's your cue, Joe, with this year's California Peace Officers Memorial Foundation pin. This year's pin is a small version of the memorial in Sacramento. This pin will be worn by officers statewide on their respective uniforms as a tribute to our fellow brothers and sisters lost in the line of duty in California since 1850. I encourage everyone hearing or listening to this to visit the California Peace Officers Memorial located at the southwest corner of 10th Street and Capitol Mall in Sacramento, where the name of every officer lost in the line of duty in California is inscribed. This memorial ensures the citizens of California never forget the brave men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice while serving their communities. You may also look up the names on this memorial at camemorial.org, all one word. In my research, I found that there have been 5 officers lost in the line of duty in El Dorado County since 1850. This year, in 2017, 6 officers were lost in the line of duty, and their names will be added to the California Peace Officers Memorial on Monday, May 7th, an enrollment ceremony. Command staff from the Placerville Police Department will be present for this enrollment ceremony and proudly stand as we honor our fallen brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. We are indeed grateful to all of you. All
I
right.
kind of think now's the time to tell everybody about John and it's John's son-in-law is a police officer, and my grandson just became a police officer down in Anaheim. So you have 2 members of the council that kind of have close ties to.
Actually, it's my son, but yes.
Oh, it's your son. I thought it was your son-in-law. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay.
He's a great guy, but no, my son. My son is a police officer.
Okay. Well, it's my grandson. So.
Excellent.
Yes.
So glad. So
Yes.
glad. Thank
But,
you.
Thank you for that.
Yes, that's wonderful. All right, we're now in public comment portion. This portion of our evening is reserved for you. Anyone that wishes to give some comments on items that are not on our agenda. So if you would like to speak to us, please come forward. Speakers are limited to about 3 minutes, and follow the golden rule. That's all we ask. So with that, this portion of the evening is yours. Does anyone have anything they'd like to comment on? All right.
I still can't understand, Sue, why you don't sit in that front.
We should get her her own microphone.
Good evening, Sue.
Get her a little podium.
Well, they're walking extra now.
We moved it up.
Yeah, you've got it closer.
You're up here close. Yeah.
Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville. I just wanted to make a comment about the intersection at Cedar Ravine and Pacific, where we have made it so that there's a left-hand turn lane as you're coming towards Pacific. It's dangerous. because when you pull into the left-hand turn lane and somebody with a taller vehicle pulls into the right-hand turn lane, you cannot see someone coming down Cedar Ravine. I almost T-boned somebody this morning because I could not see. They had a taller vehicle than mine, and I thought the way was clear and started to pull out. Here comes a car that's shorter than the car next to me. So I had no way of knowing that they were there. So while we tried to solve one problem of the backup on that street, we have created a little bit of a dangerous situation there. So,
Well, I'm glad you're okay. Thank you very much for noting that. Anyone else? All right, we'll close public comment. Is there any written communication? No, all right, no problem. With that, we're on the consent calendar. Lots of really important items before us.
There are.
Does any member of the council wish to pull anything on the consent calendar?
No.
No? Does any member of the public wish to comment on anything on the consent calendar? All right, come on up.
Pay attention. Yeah, but we received them before the meeting, so we have them.
Sue Rodman again, Measure H&L Committee, and the 8.5, where we are finally going to get the Sierra Tank bypass project taken care of. I am really happy to see this one. This one has been on the list since before we had Measure L.
Long time.
And
Longer than
so
I
it's
care.
really wonderful to see that it's happening. And the rest of the things look like they are right down the line. Good things to do.
Good. Thank you so much. All right, with that, I'll close public comment, and I would like to make a note on item 8.8. You know, SB1 funds, everyone with the $54 billion dedicated to California's road improvement, everyone's, excited about that, and that's a good thing for our state. Just want to point out that our allotment of SB1 funds are on our consent calendar tonight, and that's $178,399. So that's additional monies for our road improvements, which is great, and the project list is before us tonight. But it's $178,000 out of $54 billion that are, guaranteed to us, and that's important to keep that in perspective. So, but we're grateful for them. So.
Yes, we are.
All right. With that, may we have the? Do I have a motion
Move for approval of consent.
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins? Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, no ordinances, no public hearings. With that, discussion action items 12.1. Our auditor is back.
He's back.
Exciting. Audit and file the annual financial report and independent auditor's report for fiscal year 2016-2017, which makes us current. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Director Warren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. And yes, tonight we have Ken Poon, CPA from the Poon Group, to present your fiscal year 16-17 audit report and financial report.
We just recently saw you, Ken, and
Exactly.
welcome back to Placerville.
As I committed and as Dave committed, we are back really in a really short time frame.
Really short time.
Yes.
Like,
So
Welcome
thank you
back.
again, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everybody, member of the City Council. Again, we just finished up our June 30, 2017 audit and issue our report by right before March, the end of March. So it's congratulate to the city. It's all caught up, and hopefully the next year is even earlier. So what we are going through today is the same old presentation, going through the scope of the audit responsibility, the approach to the audit, and then give you some highlight and then the audit results. So what we are going through today is actually the scope of work. Basically, it's two pieces. One is the financial statement audit, which actually covers the period from July 1st of 2016 to June 30, 2017. And then also, since the city has expended more than $750,000 of federal expenditure, so that's why you also have a single audit, which is a compliance audit, to make sure that those money are spent properly in accordance with those grant programs. So the audit responsibility, management responsible for the financial statement by presenting these financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principle in United States of America, adopt sound accounting policy, establish proper internal control over both financial reporting and compliance, and then provide evidence supporting to the amount and the disclosure in your financial statement. And last but not least is to prevent and detect fraud. Our responsibility is perform these in conformity with two different standards. One is the generally accepted auditing standard under the AICPA rule, and then also because you have spent more than $750,000 of federal expenditure, the financial statement audit is also subject to the government auditing standard. So basically, it's more scrutiny on the internal control side. We also we're responsible to communicate to you with those charged with governance, assess the audit risk of internal control over financial reporting and compliance, determine these financial statements are fairly presented, and last but not least is to render our audit opinions. So the approach to the audit, four basic approach. I'm not going through that over and over again since we just finished up our last presentation not too long ago, but just give you the highlight. So the financial statement actually have a couple documents in there. So the first document is the Independent Auditor's Report, which actually showing your responsibility, my responsibility, and then also our opinion. The Management Discussion and Analysis, which is a required supplementary information under GASB Statement number 34, even though you see that this is unaudited, but actually give you a sense of what's going on during the year. So between the year, you have some analysis. They've actually give you a really great explanation of the increase in your fund balance, your net position. So there's a really great document in there, which really tells a story. The basic financial statement is actually what we focus on. The government-wide financial statement is a consolidated financial statement of the whole entire city, which break it down into governmental funds and the business type activities. The fund financial statement is actually the day-to-day operation fund statement, which include all the general funds, special revenue funds, enterprise fund, capital project funds. Those are included in this set of financial statement. And then also this statement, you do have a budget adopted on these. And last but not least is the notes to the financial statement, and that's give you a lot more detail of what's the numbers behind those. The required supplementary information, as you know, GASB has not stop issuing new GASB pronouncement, and since GASB 34, they actually do have some couple great information, including the budget and actual, especially for your general fund, so you can see the exactly how much that you adopt for each program, and then at the end of the day, what is the result? So a positive or negative result on those budget item. With GASB 68, the pension standard, so there's a lot more information added into the required supplementary information, which include the change in the proportionate share of net pension liability and related ratio, and then the schedule of contribution is also included in the RSI. The supplementary information is other information that's not considered major. So, for example, other non-major funds are all included in the supplementary information. So let's take a look at the numbers. So total asset as of June 30, 2017, you have close to $130 million in total asset. Liabilities, $76 million, resulting in the net position of $57 million. And you can tell there are two elements which call it out deferred outflow resources and deferred inflow resources. Those are items that the actuary did not use it. It's the change in assumption, or the difference between the projected investment earnings and the actual investment earnings are not actually utilized all in 1 year and recognized as pension expenses. So those items are actually recorded in these two items, and we'll use it in the future. Okay, so net investment in capital asset total almost like $57 million. Those are actually your infrastructure, your the non-liquid asset. It's all included in these items. Restricted is about like $6.6 million, resulting in another $6 million as unrestricted as deficit. The deficit is really created by the reporting of the pension liabilities, which I'm going to talk about that later. So total expenses for the year is about like $18 million. Program revenue is about $19 million. So at the end of the day, the net cost of service for both governmental activities and the business type activities, summed it all up, is about like $1.4 million surplus. So also, you have some taxes coming in of close to $9 million, some other general revenue, including the investment earnings, $27,000. At the end of the day, you have a $10 million surplus for the year, which is a great improvement for the current year. So, general fund is always the main operating fund of the city, so that's why I'm looking at it more closely. $2.8 million of total asset as of June 30, 2017. Liabilities $643,000, resulting the fund balance of $2.1 million. As you can tell, the unassigned, it's a big positive number of $1.6 million. So what about the current year result? It's pretty much break even. So $737 deficit for the fund, but it's pretty, what I consider is really breaking even. So total revenue, $8.3 million. Expenditure is about 8.4, and then another transfer in trying to pay back the general fund for the administrative costs, $53,000. So at the end of the day, it's pretty much break even.
And Ken, if I may, we had a relatively good year. However, you may recall we had a bad year for claims, general liability claims. The general fund alone was impacted by $56,000 in general liability claims. So if it wasn't for those claims, you'd actually have a surplus. Just pointing that out.
Yeah. So some financial indicator and key pension information that I pulled it out from the financials. So the first one, the line item, is net cost of service compared to tax revenue. The ratio is extremely low because one of the good thing about this year, all the expenses that you pay current year are covered by the user fee, grants, so that's why it's almost like 100% recovered by the program revenue. So purely all the tax revenue is actually going into your bottom line, so which is a really great result. The next item is take a look at the rainy days fund. So for the general fund, so in order to calculate the rainy days fund, I usually use the unassigned fund balance compared to the annual expenditure for the fund. So GFOA best practice usually is a 2 months expenditure, 2 months of expenditure as reserve. So you're a little bit more than 2 months. So 19.36% for the current year. So which actually maintain a good ratio. The next big ticket item is the hot topic. Still talking about pension. I believe that you had the presentation from CalPERS not too long ago. So the pension, it's always a estimate number. So the last actuarial study that was done as of June 30, 2016, based on the 2015 valuation date, they used the discount rate of 7.65%, which in your liability, the city record about like $16.3 million of total net pension liability. As you know, the investment earning is very optimistic, and CalPERS in the last couple of years has not been able to make that happen. So back in December of 2017, they already start talking about, they approved to drop the discount rate from 7.5% to 7% progressively. So since I'm not an actuary, but the report actually gives you a sense of what will be what's going to happen if it dropped by 1%. So this chart is actually give you a sense if the discount rate dropped by 1%. The city is actually to see that the liability will be at close to $23 million. The other way around, if the investment earning is that great and they change the discount rate to plus 1%, so the liability would drop, but the possibility of this one is extremely rare. Okay. So the other post-employment benefit, it's another plan that has not been fully adopted and put the whole entire liabilities on the face of a financial statement. So it's the face of a financial statement is only report the funding liability. But For full accrual basis, as of your last actuarial study based on July 1st of 2015, it was close to $3 million of unfunded OPEB liabilities, and which will be recorded in your next fiscal year financial statement. So the city is still using as a pay-as-you-go methodology. You don't have any dollar amount set aside in an irrevocable trust, so the funding status as of this point is still 0%.
Can I ask a couple of questions around this? So, let's see, in this previous slide, there was the one in the middle, the discount rate of 7.65%.
Sure.
And it showed the total pension liability
Right.
is $16 million. Okay. But that's our entire pension liability, correct? That's like every employee we've ever had and that are still alive, and every employee we have currently. That's our total pension liability. It is not the elephant in the room that is we're paying money out of our general fund for folks that don't work for us anymore. We're backfilling against their pensions, people that have retired. I have stumped people by asking a nonsensical question.
Do you want to answer, Ken, or do you want me to?
I think Dave knows what I'm talking about.
So, first of all, that's a snapshot in time.
I got that.
As of June 30th, 2017,
I
that was the
understand.
measured outstanding liability, net liability
Right.
for your pensions, based on the assumptions.
Right.
It's based on an actuarial analysis evaluation report,
Right.
which is an estimate.
Sure. I guess maybe what I'm saying is there's this notion that, I mean, as long as you're in a going venture and you have employees and they have pensions, you will be paying into their pension fund, and that portion of it is something that people expect. You know, you have current employees, they're going to retire someday, you want to make sure they have a nice retirement, you're going to put money into a pension fund. But then there's this other, and although what happened at the state and PERS impacts not just, it impacts all pensioners, whether they're collecting a pension today or they're going to collect a pension in the future, their catastrophe impacts everybody. But there is a notion that you are paying, I mean, let's see, gosh. When PERS was masters of the universe, people would retire and they would go off, literally off the books. You never had to think about them again. They were going to go off to this special place where PERS never made a mistake, and their pensions would be fully funded from that money over there, and in your budget here in the here and now, you didn't have to think about it, okay? Now we're thinking about it, because not only are we, am I making any sense on this?
Yes. First of all,
don't just be kind to me, but you know, I think you know what I think you know what I'm saying, because
there's been a lot of changes. You've had enhancements to benefits.
Right.
You've had unrealistic actuarial assumptions.
Right.
That did not they didn't play out, and they continue not to play out. And so now CalPERS is trying to catch up by changing the assumptions.
Right.
And turning the dials, reducing the return on investment,
Sure.
changing, and there's future changes. We talked about in our presentation in February, the smoothing of losses,
Right.
and they're going to shorten the period for the smoothing, and that's going to further expand your
Right.
unfunded liability. So this number already is outdated.
I guess the question is, what are we paying above and beyond what we would have been paying had PERS not been a bunch of idiots? Well, I'm sorry. I know I use a lot of sarcasm, but I mean, they were a bunch of idiots. I'm sorry. This is a thing decades in the making, and now we're all holding the bag. And what I'm trying to get at is, if we had pensions and like the pension at Marshall Hospital, we'd be paying along, and you'd get some benefits in the future, and everything would be fine, and we'd be paid out, and everything would be cool. But that's not what's happening now. Not only are we paying pensions in for our current employees, and we love all of you, by the way, but then we're also paying for people that don't work here anymore. They're coming out of our general fund. And I think what's important to me, at least, and I think would be important to the public, is this $16 million includes money that we would be paying out anyway. If everything was running well, this number might be $13 million. I don't know. I don't know how much our pension liability would be for our current employees if everything was running fine. But we're also paying this extra money, and I think the extra money is the one I'm trying to get at, because that's the one that eats your general fund. You expect to pay money into a pension fund for your current employees and if everything's running right. But there's this extra money now that we're having to pay out, which is going to eviscerate us if we're not careful. And that's the number I want to know. A total number is great, and I understand we have responsibilities, but it's that extra number. Is it $1 million? Is it $2 million? How much of this number is a number that wouldn't exist if PERS hadn't been so stupid?
You're looking at it.
This is the
$16 million is a shortfall in the funding of the pension. Now, there's investment losses. There's a lot of
there's a reason
components
why.
in the mix.
Just
but
besides their idiocy. Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, that if you take total assets we have in the plan and the total liabilities,
Okay.
the 16 million is the net amount.
So this is it.
That's the credit card.
Now that's the
balance.
big number, but no one's going to come in here and ask us for $16 million right now.
No.
So how much are we paying out a year extra? How much is it? How much are we going to be paying in the general fund?
Okay. So for the year 2016 measurement date, so actually for 2017, we have the updated number. So for the miscellaneous plan, you are paying about 821,000. And then for the safety plan, you are paying about 489,000. So it's about $1.3 million.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
$1.3 million in total.
Yeah, on page 72 of the report, there's about 2/3 of the way down the page, it summarizes the information that Ken indicated earlier.
Page was 72?
Page 72, about 2/3 of the way down the page.
Got it.
Yeah. Oh, okay, they're right there. So that's an amount of money that we are paying over and above right now because of, PERS was pretty stupid, but then they also had a depression happen in the middle of all this, and that certainly hurt their earnings, and that wasn't their fault as far as I know.
But there were also some grandiose prizes given.
Oh, no, that's a corrupt organization, and most of those people should probably be in jail, but, if you went into a
Well, it's
liquor-
not them, it's the legislature, it goes all the way to
Yeah.
the
In any
Capitol.
event, I'm just trying to nail that number down. 1.3 million, is that extra? Is that like we're paying extra?
That's our total contributions.
Okay, fine.
Right, that's the total, that's not the extra.
Yeah.
That's total what we pay on an annual basis.
Right.
So there's two pieces, remember, I don't know if any of it's actually going to extra, because for our current employees, because of the discount rate they're using, et cetera, we're still probably not completely paying what is required to keep up that. In other words, that number is gonna keep growing until
Yeah.
PERS adjust the dials, as Dave put it, to get it to where and they're gonna require us to pay more, continue to pay more, because the discount rate's gonna continue to go down.
Correct.
And they're gonna shorten the period that Dave talked
the
about,
losses,
that also is gonna require that number to go up, so.
So over the next, I'm sorry,
That equates to about half of our general fund revenue every year?
no, about 1/8.
1/8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, right now.
Right.
Yeah, general fund's about seven, general fund was what, almost 8 million, just over 8
Almost 8
million, I
million.
believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over the next 7 years, your pension contributions are going to rise by about 1.2 million based on current PERS forecast. And that's playing catch up. So right now, we're not paying the full burden rate towards your pensions to fully fund your pensions.
I guess maybe at some point, not in this venue, because I can confuse people with the best of them, but myself included, I'd like to sit down and come up with a graphic or a chart that sort of demonstrates that number, but in a graphic way. Because my guess is at some point the public's going to come in here and wonder what the heck, well, when we have to make really hard decisions about funding parts of the city. And I want to say right up front, I have no problem with pensions. I think everybody should get one. This is just a particularly thorny issue that we need to deal with. But I would like to sit down and maybe come up with a graphic or two that we could show, because this topic's not going away, and people are going to start getting more concerned about it as it starts to eat away from services for the here and now.
Well, look at the cities that are declaring bankruptcy
Well,
because
right.
of it, so it's not, it's just,
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm
thank you
sorry
for digging
about
into that. Thank you, Ken,
Yeah,
for your
no
patience.
problem.
And continue with
No
our
problem.
presentation.
Yes, I can tell pension is a big issue, and the state, everybody's actually looking at it closely. And for the city of Placerville here, I don't see it's an issue, but it's not extremely like the hot topic, because some of the city that I go into currently, they are already in fiscal distress. And the next couple of years, people that are facing increasing the contribution from maybe 17% for the miscellaneous plan, they will eventually see a 35%, which actually double up in the next 5 years. So those cities are actually having a whole lot of challenges. So having said that, we finish up all the key numbers and get into the audit results. So, and I'm happy that we collect all the sufficient audit evidence that we are able to issue an unmodified opinions, which state that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respect, the significant accounting policy have been consistently applied, the estimates are reasonable, and the disclosure are properly reflected in the financial statement. No disagreement with management in terms of the audit procedures, accounting treatment, no accounting issues, and also this year we do not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiency in internal control over both financial reporting and compliance, because you guys all catch up and there's really no issues for the current year. And last but not least, we did not determine there's any material irregularity during our audit. So that's conclude my presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Ken. We
Always.
appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your very efficient and clear reports. This is hard stuff to wade through, and you make it very easy, and so we
Thank you.
appreciate that. And
Always pleasure.
And Mr. Warren, we want to thank you for your diligent work here. This is proof of that. You continue to lead our city in a very fiscally responsible manner. And thank you for, we're compliant, we're up to date, and we greatly appreciate your diligence. And
Very well.
you
Even
help
if
us.
we do give you a bad time.
I really appreciate it,
Not at all.
Dave. Your excellent
It's
work.
important. And one more thing, excuse me, staff will prepare a chart that shows what the contributions are, current contributions versus our side fund or unfunded liability, so you can see what that difference is in
Great,
the
that'll
future.
be helpful going on. Are there any council member questions or comments? I'll start to my
No,
right.
just thank you, Ken. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
To my left, anyone? All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank
We'll
you,
see you
Ken.
next year.
Yes.
Okay.
Does our member of the audience?
Oh, yes, I'm public comment. I do apologize. No? All right.
Okay.
Great.
You sure?
All right, well, thank you. Safe travels home.
Keep Dave on his toes.
All right. So this is to acknowledge and file. Do we need a motion for that? Yes. Do I have a motion?
I will move to acknowledge and file.
All
And
right.
the second to my left.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. With that, it's not even 7:20. We're on to council reports. Transit.
say anything.
Vice Mayor Cunha or Councilmember Borelli? No meeting? No transportation? LAFCO?
No meeting.
No SACOG?
We missed the SACOG meeting because I missed my very first SACOG meeting on Thursday, by the way. I just want to let you know, that day-long thing, was it Thursday or when? Thursday.
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 That Thursday
Oh.
thing, I stayed here
Oh,
for,
no.
my very first, my perfect attendance record is done.
Oh, no.
Well, it was worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. No meeting on the 2x2. Are there any requests for future agenda items? All right. City manager and staff reports?
Nothing tonight.
Nothing.
You know what John was just talking about? We didn't mention it, maybe we should.
Go right ahead.
No, go ahead, just go ahead.
Oh,
What we did Thursday.
But we're going to get a report.
Wait till then?
just want to,
You can tell her what. we did.
thank all of our staff and all members of the council for participating in our city planning and goal setting workshop that was held last week, and really appreciated everyone's time in looking at the future of our city. That's great.
Time worthwhile spent.
Certainly was. All right. Upcoming items. In 2 weeks, on May 8th, will be a Union Mine High School's presentation, Placerville Station 2 utility agreement, Broadway sidewalk design contract, Clay Street Drake Haglin amendment, Western Placerville interchange Phase 2 contract change orders, which all that is subject to change, though, so don't hold us to that, but tentatively, that's what we're looking for. So first of all, we'll see you all out on Saturday, beautifying our city, and then we'll see you back here on May 8th. So have a good evening, everyone.